I'm Jeremy Scahill from Dropsite News, dropsitenews.com. The past several days have seen an intense series of events unfold in the US-Israeli war of aggression against Iran. As of this moment, Iran, Israel, and the United States have all indicated that some form of a ceasefire agreement is in effect. This follows 12 or so days of heavy Israeli bombing across Iran that killed hundreds of people, a majority of them civilians. The United States conducted its own bombing of Iran as well, including with the use of some 14 30,000-pound bombs on Iranian nuclear sites. On Monday, Iran launched a series of missiles at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the headquarters of U.S. Central Command, the prime base from which U.S. military operations are emanating in the Middle East. As the world waited to see how Donald Trump was going to respond, out of nowhere, Trump posts on his Truth Social site that a ceasefire agreement has been reached. For several hours overnight, neither Israel nor Iran formally confirmed that this was true. But then on Tuesday morning, both sides affirmed that there was some form of a deal, though they had their own interpretations and spin as to what that deal was. The United States and Qatar reportedly brokered this deal. The situation remains very uncertain and tense. This morning, President Trump spoke to reporters on the White House lawn, and he expressed anger at both Iran and Israel for reports that the ceasefire had already been violated, but he really reserved his sharpest comments for Israel, repeatedly saying that he was very upset with them and that he was going to intervene to try to stop it, accusing them of essentially unloading munitions even after the ceasefire had taken effect. In fact, it was being broadcast on live television, and Trump used an expletive when he was talking about his view of the situation. There is a lot to discuss, and we are going to go live now to Tehran, where I am joined by Dr. Foad Izadi, Associate Professor in the Faculty of World Studies at the University of Tehran. Dr. Izadi, thank you so much for joining us here today from Tehran, the Iranian capital.
Thank you for the invitation.
So let's just start with your understanding of where the situation is as of now. Donald Trump surprised people by posting this announcement of a ceasefire. It was unclear whether Iran and Israel had actually agreed to it. First, give us your understanding of the Iranian position on this announcement by President Trump.
You know, Iran did not start this war. Iran is the victim of an imposed war. Iran was in the middle of negotiations. The sixth round was supposed to happen 2 Sundays ago, and the Israelis attacked 2 days before that. This was a surprise attack. Some people were thinking that if negotiations fail, there may be an attack, but few people thought in the middle of negotiations, Israelis or Americans could attack. It seems, at least at that stage, Trump and Netanyahu were working as a team. This is what Trump said after the United States attacked Iranian sites. We had the Wall Street Journal report saying that the negotiations were a deception operation, trying to make Iranians think that they're going through actual negotiations, but in reality, they were designed to create a surprise when Israelis attacked. And in his Fox News interview, Netanyahu basically acknowledged that this is what happened. Because of this history of the last few weeks, Iran, I think Iranian leaders welcomed a ceasefire. We have had more than 600 civilian casualties in the last 12 days, mostly women and children. These are the people who are identified. I'm sure this number will go up. The hope is that the ceasefire holds. The hope is that the Israelis realize that attacking Iran is not a good idea. And the hope is that Trump realizes giving U.S. Foreign policy to Netanyahu to conduct is not America first, that's Israel first. So the hope is that Trump realizes that working with Netanyahu, being a team member of Netanyahu, is not a good idea. And these are the hopes that people here have.
Dr. Izadi, when Donald Trump posted this message on social media announcing the ceasefire, we didn't have an immediate reaction from Iran. The Iranian foreign minister sort of said that, yes, there's some discussion, but we didn't start this war, and essentially kind of challenged the framing or the way that it was being presented. What is your understanding right now of the official position of the Islamic Republic of Iran about this ceasefire?
The official position is that Iran will hold fire as long as Israelis don't attack Iran. We had the foreign minister making a statement. We had the Iranian military making a statement that they're watching carefully, but all the different levels of Iranian government, political, military, are acknowledging the fact that we are in a ceasefire, and I think their hope is that we stay in a ceasefire.
The Iranian government also has indicated that its position is that its defensive operations against Israel and the fact that Iranian missiles were able to penetrate into Israel in an unprecedented way, causing, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, this was the most damage to Israel that has been caused in history by Iranian missiles. Is that correct?
You know, this is relatively something new. This whole process started last year when the Israelis attacked Iranian embassy in Damascus. So for the first time, Iran responded to that attack by attacking occupied Palestine. And then the Israelis killed the political leader of Hamas in Tehran when he was here for an official visit. So he was killed, his associates were killed. That was the second time Israelis attacked inside Iran. And Iran responded to that. But in both cases, Iran's response was quite limited. A third attack by Israelis came attacking some of Iran's defenses without any provocation. So the first instance, the second instance, the third instance were Israeli initiatives. They started. And Iran decided not to respond the third time. And so there was this talk that since Israelis attacked Iran again, Iran needs to respond. But some of the military leaders that were killed 2 weeks ago by Israelis argued that this may escalate the situation. They reserved the right to respond to the third Israeli attack, but they never did until you had the attack, the surprise attack 12 days ago. And then Iranians realized that unless there is a cost to attacking Iran, this will continue. So this time, Iran's response was much more serious. They continue to fight back, and the Israelis continue to bomb Iran. Until today, the Israelis apparently are going to follow the ceasefire, and if they do, Iran will stop. And the hope is that this is not repeated again.
Dr. Izadi, the Israeli government and Netanyahu himself in a statement said that they're agreeing to this ceasefire because they achieved their objectives, that they, along with the United States bombing of the Iranian nuclear sites, that they, Trump said they've obliterated the Iranian nuclear capacity, which you can address if you choose to. But I want to get your response to this statement by Netanyahu that the reason they're signing the ceasefire right now is that they achieve their objectives, the military objectives. And he said that he's now made Israel secure in perpetuity. But there's some indication that the Israeli air defense systems were tremendously weakened by the Iranian attacks, that as Iran began to use more sophisticated missile technology, that there were many more direct hits that were happening on Israeli targets. What is your sense of why Israel would agree to this ceasefire right now? Is it what Netanyahu is saying, that they already achieved their objectives, or is there something else at play?
Israelis have been asked by the world to stop their genocide in Gaza. And there have been 5 UN resolutions so far asking for a ceasefire in Gaza. And the United States and Israel have refused to do that, and the United States has vetoed these resolutions. So that's a ceasefire. So why is it that they refuse to have a ceasefire in Gaza, and then, according to Trump, Israelis ask Trump for a ceasefire? So what's the difference between Gaza and Iran? I think the difference are these ballistic missiles. Unfortunately, people of Gaza are defenseless. An average of 20 children are killed in Gaza on a daily basis in the past 19 months. And because they're defenseless, there is no cost in killing women and children in Gaza, and that continues. Attacking Iran has cost. And I think that is the reason they are doing a ceasefire with Iran. They're accepting a ceasefire with Iran. They're requesting a ceasefire with Iran. I think Israelis had 3 miscalculations. The first miscalculation was what you just mentioned. American technology was good, but Iranian technology was better, because Iranian missiles could penetrate these defense systems. Not every time, but enough. I think Israelis were not expecting that. They were expecting to have a better quality defense system. They were trusting American technology too much. The second miscalculation the Israelis had was with regard to the killings that they did on the first night of attack. They killed a lot of Iranian military leaders. They killed a good number of Iranian scientists and their family and their neighbors. They were attacking their apartments. And I think Israelis thought that it would take a few weeks or at least a few days for the Iranian military to be able to reestablish itself. It took just a few hours. So it was, the Iranian military managed to appoint new officers, and that military machine started functioning very quickly. And the third miscalculation that the Israelis had was with regard to regime change. On the second day of attacks, Netanyahu had a message for the Iranian people. He asked them to come to the streets and unite. And they did, against him and against Trump. And there was this rally around the flag effect. And Iranian people are more united today than any other time during my lifetime, thanks to Netanyahu and Trump. And I think one reason Trump is upset with Netanyahu is because Netanyahu's calculations are not really working out. You know, when they attacked the Iranian television station, why would you attack a television station, especially when you know they have live broadcast? You saw that brave lady hearing incoming missiles, not getting. She got up after the missile was hit. I'm not sure if I managed to do that, but she did. Iranian ladies are generally braver than most people I have seen. So why would they attack a media outlet? When you do regime change, one of the first things that is supposed to fall to the hand of opposition is the media outlet, is the television, is the country's television. And I think the hope was that they would attack that building, people will run away, and then the people who are supposed to do regime change would take over. But that never happened, because the people who were supposed to do regime change realized that their country is under attack. Iranians like Iran, like Americans like America, and they don't want the infrastructure to be attacked. They don't want civilians to be attacked. Some people here don't like the government, but that doesn't mean they like Netanyahu, a war criminal, or Trump. So overall, I think there were serious miscalculations on the part of Israelis. They sold this plan to Trump, I think, many months ago. And then Trump realized that the things that Israelis were telling him really didn't come true. I think he wants to have a win. He's claiming that he has destroyed Iran's nuclear program. And so he wants to end this crisis that he has started, that he created while he's winning. I think that's his calculation. And Iran doesn't mind that. Iran doesn't want to be fighting Israel or United States. So he's going to follow the ceasefire as long as the other side does.
How do these events change Iran's calculus regarding the idea of a pursuit of a nuclear weapon? I mean, there's of course been a lot of misinformation and propaganda about the nature of Iran's program, and I'm not sure how many Americans are aware of the fact that one of the main factors in why Iran has not developed a nuclear weapon has little to do with technology and more to do with the religious position, the fatwa that was issued by the supreme leader in his religious capacity about nuclear weapons. And I know there's been a debate within Iran about this fatwa and whether it could be updated or open to interpretation. But I'm wondering, with some of what we've heard from Iran, suggesting a potential stance of non-cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency as a result of this, or saying, as the foreign minister said in Turkey the other day, that the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which Iran is a signatory to and Israel is not, failed to protect Iran. So my question for you is, does it make it more likely now? Is part of the message that's been sent that if you want to avoid this type of aggression, or if you want to have an actual effective deterrent against Israel, that Iran actually should be pursuing a nuclear weapon?
There are some people in Iran that are asking the same question. Two nuclear weapon states attacked a non-nuclear weapon state. This is the first time in history that has happened. While the US intelligence community in March published a report, it's still available online, dni.gov. The Director of National Intelligence has that website, dni.gov.
.gov, I believe, yeah.
.gov, yeah. The report says three things about Iran's nuclear program. This is a worldwide threat assessment that the US intelligence community provides. This is a consensus of what US intelligence community believes. So they said three things about Iran's nuclear program. The first thing they said is that Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon. The second thing they said, very importantly, they said that Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon program. And the third thing they said is that Iranian leaders have not decided to have a nuclear weapon program. This is what they said. Rafael Grossi, who is the director of the the International Atomic Energy Agency, has been doing a lot of interviews in the last 2 days. And he has been repeating a sentence in every interview, that with all the inspections that IAEA had, they never found a nuclear weapon program in Iran. And IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency's budget is $39 million annually, and they spend $25 million out of that $39 million watching Iran and inspecting Iran and going to different sites in Iran. And the 3 sites that were bombed were under IAEA inspection. They visit these sites regularly. Attacking nuclear sites is illegal under international law because of the environmental disaster that can provide. So for the United States to attack these sites when U.S. intelligence community says Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon program, when IAEA says Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon program, that wasn't supposed to be done. IAEA did issue a report 2 days before the attacks, which I think was coordinated by Western governments. And the report questioned a number of sites in Iran that with IAEA inspectors, they had found some enriched material that were used 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And these old files were supposed to be closed because this is nothing new. They were supposed to be closed under the 2015 nuclear agreement. Iranians thought they were closed. The other side says they were not. And what Iranian government has been saying is that, Israelis have Mossad, this intelligence service. They are good at what they do. With the war on Iran in the last 12 days, we had Mossad agents sabotaging. We had 5 car bombs in Tehran, for example. They engage in these activities, and Iranian government believes they actually polluted some of these sites, the Israelis did, so they can create a case against Iran, so they can provide the report. But the report, first of all, didn't say that Iran was making a nuclear bomb. The report was questioning some of these old sites. And then that doesn't give permission to Israelis or Americans to attack. IAEA makes the report. They present that report to the UN Security Council. If a country in the UN Security Council thinks that this is a dangerous situation, they would have a resolution. If that resolution gets enough vote, that country can be put under Article 42 of Chapter 7 of the UN Charter, and then you can attack if you have permission from the Security Council. So you have to go through a process. You cannot just cite a report and then start attacking. So, as you say, there is a lot of confusion about Iran's nuclear program. Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon program. The program is peaceful. But as you say, there are a lot of people in Iran that point out to the fact that when you're peaceful, when your sites are inspected, when you have this good boy foreign policy, you're cooperating with everybody, they are attacked in the manner that we have been witnessing. So there are some people who are asking for a policy change that's being debated as we speak.
I mean, if we look also at the broader picture, you of course mentioned the 20-month genocide in Gaza, which is certainly continuing in a very intense manner as you and I talk right now. And we're watching every single day as dozens of Palestinians are gunned down and killed as they go to seek this meager amount of food that has been allowed into Gaza in this scheme arranged by the United States and Israel. You have the expansion of illegal settlements continuing unabated in the occupied West Bank, the attacks against the Palestinians of the occupied West Bank. You supposedly have a ceasefire in Lebanon, and yet Israel continues to conduct drone strikes and other attacks inside of Lebanon. You had regime change in Syria, and the Israelis have continued to expand their occupation of Syrian territory. Trump, in his meetings in the Gulf recently, met with Jolani, with the self-declared interim president of Syria, and comes out of it saying that he thinks that he's ultimately going to normalize relations with Israel. Over the past 20 months, we've seen enormous changes in the region and shifts of power. The assassination of Saeed Hassan Nasrallah, the Secretary General of Hezbollah, the killing of hundreds of Hezbollah leaders and commanders, and now this unprovoked attack on Iran. I want to get your analysis of what all of this means now for the region as a whole, because Iran is the most powerful counterbalance in the region to Israeli and American hegemony, but many of Iran's closest partners and allies have endured extraordinarily devastating attacks and leadership decapitation. So give us your sense of what all of these changes mean in the region and also for Iran.
I think the ultimate Israeli plan for Iran is beyond regime change. The reason they want to change the current government is because they want to have a weaker state, a failed state. They hope that a failed state will lead to breakup of Iran. They want to repeat the experience of Libya in Iran. They want to make Iran look like Libya. And if they manage to do that, if they separate the oil-rich sections of Iran, the other parts could be managed easily because they don't have any serious financial resources. And then they make the oil-rich section of Iran to become Saudi Arabia, milking cows, giving whatever money they have to Trump to boast about foreign investment in the United States, while they have a budget deficit. And then the Middle East could become a place where you have the Israeli domination, and you have the Arab government's oil money, and then Trump and his sons can come and make a lot of money out of that current situation. What is blocking that is Iran, because of the 1979 revolution. Iran was a military cap during the Shah's time. Iranian people didn't like that. They overthrew the Shah's government, who came into power through a regime change scheme in 1953. There was a coup against the democratically elected government, Mossadegh's government. So they want to do, they did 7 years ago, that was an American-British coup. Now we had this American-Israeli war. So that's the ultimate goal. So they take care of Iran, they make Middle East a place for the 1% in the United States to come and enjoy themselves. And then, China is getting about 40% of its energy from this region. So in the great power competition, they can put pressure on China by putting pressure on China's energy resources. So this is the plan that it seems some people in Washington and in occupied Palestine are thinking about. And so the first step is to get rid of Iran. Basically. That's the problem they have. What Iran is doing basically is fighting for humanity, because Iran is the only country that is supporting the Palestinian cause. What are the problems in this plan? they can get rid of Iran, so they can force Palestinians out of Gaza. And so the force that is withstanding this pressure is Iran, is are Palestinians, Lebanese in southern Lebanon, and they are actually fighting for human justice. When you witness a genocide, you're not supposed to be watching. You're supposed to be doing something about it, as Yemen is doing in its limited capacity. So you have this axis of resistance, and then you have the genocidal regime with its partners, and that's why you had the war. There is this conflict. I think most people in the world, the population, world's population, they don't like genocide. The people who like genocide are some maybe Zionists in occupied Palestine. They like genocide. A few hundred people in Washington, they like genocide. But humanity doesn't like genocide. And Iran is representing the humanity side. So I guess we just have to wait and see how things are going to develop.
Dr. Izadi, I want to ask you about the Arab nations in the region, specifically the Arab Gulf nations, where a lot of the centers of American military might are positioned in the Middle East. Of course, Iran decided in its response to the U.S. bombings over the weekend to attack the U.S. Central Command. On a military level, it makes sense to have responded toward what is essentially the epicenter of these operations. But as I listened this morning to the Prime Minister of Qatar, as he spoke alongside the Prime Minister of Lebanon, he went to great lengths to denounce Iran for its aggression against Qatar. And he mentioned the airbase, but it was almost as though U.S. Central Command is just like a hotel that is in Qatar and not the brain and the operations command center of the attacks that just occurred on Iran, of the support for Israel's operations in the region, of American military might in the Middle East. And I know that Qatar and Iran have, on many levels, a very friendly relationship and a collegial relationship. I know that that's true. On another level, though, all of these Arab states have stood by and watched the mass slaughter of the Palestinian people. They issued statements when Iran was unilaterally attacked in an unprovoked manner that, yes, they say Israel started this, as the Qatari prime minister said this morning. But when Iran then conducted its response, you then have these words, aggression, and a portrayal of it that stops just short of pretending as though there isn't a context to why Iran might have struck an American military base in Qatar. So I want to ask you about that as you watch the decimation of much of Hezbollah's capacity and certainly its leadership, as you watch the regime change operations, the genocide unfolding. What is your assessment of the position of all of these Arab countries, whether it's Egypt and Jordan participating also in the defense of Israel in earlier Iranian missile strikes, as Iran, as you say, stands alone in this battle with Ansar Allah as two nations that are responding to this? I mean, what is your assessment of the position of these Arab Gulf nations that on the one hand allow their territory to be used to facilitate the genocide, to facilitate the attacks against Iran, and on the other level sort of say, well, we don't want Israel doing this. But then at the end of the day, the strongest words seem to be reserved for condemnations of Hamas and Iran.
We are talking about dictatorships. In Egypt, they came into power through a military coup. For a short time. There was a government that came into power through elections. They had a military government. Then the Arab Spring came. Egypt experienced a couple of years of a democratic government. Then there was another coup. So that's a dictatorship. and then you have these kings, whether it's Jordan or Saudi Arabia or the UAE or Kuwait, or Qatar, that depend on the United States for their rule. These dictatorships treat their country as their personal bank, personal wealth, and they basically have to listen to the United States because they depend on the United States. They are client states of the United States. So when the US tells them that we need to have a base in your country, they have to say yes. When the US tells them that you have to pay for that base and pay for the soldiers that are there, they have to say yes. When it comes to the issue of the genocide, they have to watch their language, because if they don't, then they will be criticized by the United States. And when it comes to Iran, they need to watch their language, because if they want to say anything good, then they will face difficulty. And generally, because of the nature of the governments they have, they generally don't want to say anything good about Iran, because Iran had a kingdom, and then there's a republic, and they don't want to see what happened in Iran happen in their country. So for the last 46 years since 1979 revolution, they have been hostile to Iran. So this is the reality of dictatorship, client state dictatorships that act in this manner because they are not representing their people, they're representing ruling families, royal families that depend on the United States for the
I know we only have a couple of minutes left, but I do want to ask you, do you, given that Israel has a PhD in violating ceasefire agreements, and that we have seen what Donald Trump openly stated was a deception operation, pretending to be engaged in good faith negotiations with Iran, talking about he's going to make a decision in 2 weeks, and then 30 hours later, you have the United States dropping 30,000-pound bombs on Iran. Given what we know about the dishonesty of the United States in its ceasefire negotiations with Hamas and the Palestinian resistance, with the way that it conducted itself in this kind of negotiation fraud with Iran leading up to the Israeli and then American military strikes on Iran, and the fact that you have Netanyahu, who has openly said repeatedly that he intends to violate these ceasefires. He does it. I mean, this morning they're bombing Lebanon. Yesterday they were bombing Lebanon. There's supposedly a ceasefire in Lebanon. They're seizing territory in Syria. They bombed almost the entire conventional military capacity of Syria. I mean, how is this ceasefire going to hold? And like, how do you approach this? If you're Iran, how do you approach it when you know that Netanyahu is not going to respect any paper that he signs? And my understanding is there is no paper right now about this. But even if there is a paper, he doesn't respect it. And Trump's administration has repeatedly lied, not just to the Iranians, but also to Palestinian negotiators with promises supposedly made by Steve Witkoff. So how do you deal with this now that there is something like a ceasefire?
You know, let me just, I forgot to mention this, that before the Israeli attack, Trump had a tweet, and you have done investigative journalism, something could be done on this issue. Just a few hours before the Israeli attack, Trump had a tweet saying that the negotiations were going well and he expected good results. So until the last minute, this deception campaign was working. Trump was saying that there are issues occasionally in the last week or so. He was saying that there are issues, but they will be resolved. Make that deception campaign work. With regard to your question, I think the ceasefire is going to be violated the same way Netanyahu violates ceasefires in Lebanon. I think he wants to repeat the experience of Lebanon in Iran, attacking Iran at will, killing anyone he wants, attacking any site that he wants. This is his plan. The only problem that he has is that those Iranian missiles, and I think Iranian government officials are not going to fall for another deception operation. I think this is an American saying that you fool me once, shame on you. You fool me twice, shame on me. They're not going to be fooled again. And they're going to basically respond with the capacity that Iran still has. And I hope that's why I hope that the other side doesn't violate the ceasefire, because Iran has no choice to respond. And then this could widen. If Trump decides to help Israelis again, then you have the issue of American bases. Next time, I'm not sure if Iran will announce the plan to attack beforehand. They may not. And then you could have a major escalation. That is why the hope is that the ceasefire holds, and the hope is that the other side realizes that his calculations and plannings are not going to work when it comes to a country of 90 million people with resources, young people who can make good ballistic missiles.
Well, Dr. Foad Izadi, I want to thank you very much for taking the time and also apologize for the technical problems. You helped us here because we tried on a number of platforms, but it seems either they're being blocked in an offensive way from the United States or Israel, or Iran is taking moves to protect its network. We will never really know, but thank you for your technical help and also for your insight and analysis.
Thank you.
So that was Dr. Foad Izadi, Associate Professor in the Faculty of World Studies at the University of Tehran. Apologies to our audience for the technical difficulties. It really was because we were having some challenges with staying connected to Dr. Izadi in Tehran, but I think at the end of the day, it was worth it. That does it for this episode. Make sure to follow us on our podcast feed by searching for Dropsite News wherever you get your podcast. Also, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've just started building it out a bit. We're posting more and more content there. I know some people don't like Twitter or X, but we really do have a spectacular team of people that are operating what, for all practical purposes, as a 24/7 news service, really focused intensely on these US-fueled wars in the Middle East. Make sure to leave us a rating or a review on any of the channels you follow us. And if you want to support our work, we don't put anything behind a paywall, and we want to keep it that way. But you can voluntarily become a paid subscriber at dropsitenews.com. If you're already one, give somebody a gift subscription. Donations to Dropsite News are 501c3 tax deductible. On behalf of all of the really hardworking people that make Dropsite News, including our reporters in dangerous places around the world, I want to thank all of you who have our back. On behalf of the whole team, I'm Jeremy Scahill. Thanks for being with us.